Hello and konnichiwa. I'm Tomoko, your Japanese food ambassador. Today we'll learn about Japanese cooking condiments. Soy sauce, sake, and mirin. Those are all the results of Japanese fermentation. We have a guest from Japan today to teach us about Japanese fermentation. She's a certified fermentation Meister, expert in koji, and then studied with Japan Fermented Food Culture Association. She also created a line of healthy condiments called Atelier de Koji, which introduces Japanese fermentation through condiments that are familiar with Westerners. Please meet Manami Auregan from Tokyo. Welcome to my channel, Manami-san. Please let us know the reason you started working with fermentation and then what aspect of Japanese fermentation attracted you.
So I was a full-time worker until 3 years ago in the fields of automobile industry or consulting field. And it was really stressful and I couldn't get a grip of the life-work balance and and I almost had a burnout. And I had a career break and I thought about learning about something I really liked, which was the fermentation at the Japan Fermented Food Culture Association. And I was really amazed by koji, the benefits of koji. So since I started to do a promotion of koji, use of koji, both in the original way and also in a traditional way. For the original way, I have my own products, which are westernized, such as amazake ketchups, where it's the amazake replaces the sugar in ketchup, so that the Western people can eat it. And to say that the koji is not only for the Japanese food.
I always say Japanese big three is soy sauce, mirin, and sake, and then that's pretty much basic three cooking condiments on many Japanese dishes. Could you teach us a little bit about each condiment? Like started with mirin, probably the least known condiment of three.
Right, and don't worry, mirin is not really exactly known by the Japanese people either. People would think that there's, sugar in it, refined sugar to it because it's sweet, right? But it really is only made with sticky rice and rice koji, and also shoyu, and that's all. No refined sugar in real mirin, right? So I can give you the three impacts on food. So umami and the sweetness. So the refined sugar, the sweetness is only coming from the sucrose, but the mirin has complex sweetness thanks to the fermentation process. And also the second good thing is that it also keeps the form of the food when simmering. It penetrates into the tissue of the food, so it tightens it up. So it prevents the food from breaking down. For this purpose, you want to put it in the beginning of cooking, right? But you might want to be careful for sukiyaki, for example, because when you cook mirin with red meat, for example, it becomes very hard. So you want to kind of separate them. Right. And thirdly, it also adds shine to the food. You know how mirin is thick, right? So when it's cooked, it gives the coating around the food. Right, so it becomes shiny at the end.
So you mentioned that there's no sugar in mirin, but some of the mirin products, not like a real mirin, when I see the ingredient, there's like added sugar, not like in refined sugar, but like shoto, like budoto or something like that. But I like pure mirin, and then like with no salt or not many additives. What are the differences between those different mirins?
Right, so I talked about the real mirin earlier, but I would say that there are two other alternatives. So one is the fermented condiment, which has the almost the same ingredients, as the real mirin, but it's got salt in it. So it's considered as a condiment and not as an alcohol. The other one is the mirin type condiment, and the alcohol level is like only 1%, and it's only so that's why it's considered as a condiment, not as an alcohol. But because it's not going through any fermentation process, it doesn't have any complex, sweetness as I spoke about. So they put like many other additives to it, like sourness or sweetness. So you might want to look at the back of the label to make sure what you're exactly buying.
The next one is sake. People know about sake as a drink, but it's very essential to Japanese cooking. And then I don't buy ryorishu, like sake made for cooking. Why there are specific to sake ryorishu? And then what is sake? What does it do for cooking?
Right. Of course, I use also leftover sake. I don't use cooking sake either because it's got salt to it. So I use usually soy sauce with sake as well. So it has already the salt in it, right? So to control the level of salt, I don't use the sake. I don't use cooking sake, right? So sake is really good for cooking because it vaporizes the smell of food. Alcohol also penetrates into the food, and it really helps absorb the flavors of other condiments like mirin or soy sauce that you spoke about. It also adds umami of rice to food. At the end, it also tenderizes the food. It has the moisturizing effect, so it prevents the outflow of moisture. Right. And the ingredients are, for junmai sake, pure rice sake, is only rice koji, and water.
So you mentioned that sake tenderizes the meat, right? So if we keep drinking sake, do we get rid of our fat on our body? Does it tenderize our body?
I would love to say yes, it does, and then let's drink sake. But I'm not really sure. Somebody has to make a study on it so we can sell more sake.
Lastly, about soy sauce, could you tell us about soy sauce?
The real soy sauce is made in wood barrel, taking 1 or 2 years, with koji, grown soybeans, and wheat and water, and salt, of course. So it goes through many phases of fermentation process, and with many like good bacteria and microorganisms and things like such as lactic acid, yeast, and koji mold and things like that. So it really gives this complex 5 flavor taste. So it has a very enhanced 5 flavors: sweet, sour, salts, and bitter, and umami. It also gives an amazing roast flavor when you cook it. Yeah, you can think of yakitori and teriyaki easily. Also, it is not only used to add the salty taste to it, but it also reduces the strong smell of food. So a cook might just wash the fish with the soy sauce to reduce the smell as well.
So all those fermentation, we think fermentation equals our health, but I don't think it's healthy to pour like soy sauce on like everything. How can we incorporate Japanese fermented condiments in our life?
Yeah, you say that, but we can pour it onto things as well. Just to give some example, like I really like to pour mirin, without salt, mirin into hot milk as well. So it's very good. It's like Kahlua milk, right? Also, people would pour soy sauce, thick soy sauce, to the vanilla ice cream. So it gives this like salty caramel tasting to vanilla ice cream. So people like it too. But you cannot pour, of course, as you say, onto anything because it's not really good for your health. But for example, the way I use it is like I think about those fermented condiments as an alternative. For example, when you do a stir fry, instead of using your salts, you can use soy sauce. As it has the umami flavor to it, you don't have to put as much. So you can reduce the level of salt. Your mouth is already satisfied with umami, so you don't need as much salt as you might use every day, right? So about mirin, you can think of it as an alternative for sugar, right? So when you put sugar in your sauce, for example, instead you can use mirin, right? So mirin has a lot of nutrients to it, so you can take an advantage of those nutrients from mirin too. And sake is also good for preparing meat because, as I said, it tenderizes the meat as well, right? So if it's tenderized, then it gives less burden to your body too. So it's really good for your gut too. So all the fermented condiments are like mostly probiotics or prebiotics, or even both of them. So it's really good if you can have them as items in your kitchen and use them as much as possible. It's better for your health.
And then you mentioned about umami in all those three condiments. Could you tell us about umami and fermentation?
So when we speak about fermentation in Japan, we cannot avoid speaking about koji. So let me explain to you a little bit about koji. So to start with, koji is a mold living in nature, but it is available in the market in the form of koji spores. And to make a use of it, we inoculate the steamed rice with koji and make rice koji. But it can be, inoculated to any like starchy things or grains and things like that. And this becomes the starter of fermented food or condiments in Japan. And it has many enzymes. It is said that it has more than hundreds of enzymes that are released by koji during the first phase. And one of it is namely protease, which is good at breaking down the protein into amino acids. And you know how amino acid is responsible for umami tasting. So that's why you feel the umami in almost all the fermented food, and it's enhanced.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think I will see you next week about koji.
Thank you so much. I will be pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manami-san. If you'd like to know more about her line of fermented condiments or Japan Fermented Food Culture Association, please see the links in the description. Because there are so many amazing Japanese dishes that use fermented condiments, it was pretty challenging trying to narrow it down to one. Luckily, there's one dish that I've been always curious about. Remember when Manami mentioned that mirin can be used in the place of sugar? Well, this recipe I found on Mirin Association's website actually used mirin to make caramel. Let's make it together. For this recipe, you only need 3 things: equal amount of mirin, heavy cream, and patience.
All we need is just a little patience.
As this recipe requires about 30 minutes of constant stirring time. To get started, mix mirin and then cream together and then cook over medium heat until mix starts bubbling with thick consistency. Once it's ready, pour into sheet pan or into mold of your choice, and then store in fridge overnight. All that's left is cut them into bite-sized pieces and then wrap in wax paper.
Okay, let's try one. You can't really talk when you have this caramel in your mouth. Very soft and chewy. It has nice balance of saltiness and then sweetness. The sweetness doesn't really come like a bam, like sugar rush. It comes gradually and then it stays in your mouth, nice flavor. So I think when you cook this, you understand the function of mirin. It adds sweetness, it's got nice shine to it, and then it firms up food. So please try it and then let me know what you think. Thank you, and then arigato for watching. Until next time, ではまた。